Leon Draisaitl very well might reset the top of the market in the NHL. But just how good is he?
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Oilers, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Now that the playoffs are over, the sports have stopped sportsing like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So today's episode, Draisaitl Deep Dive. This is my bread and butter as a content person, as a sports analyst. I am going to articulate the case for Draisaitl as probably the fourth best hockey player in the world. And then beyond that, we have a lot of different branches to shoot off of. The first segment, we're going to start with the context, the workload, the expectations, the line mates, the quality of competition. The second segment, we're going to drop it all out. We're going to talk about the big picture, the counting stats, him versus a bunch of other people, and a whole lot more. So starting at the outset, picking a player third overall, you are expecting a franchise caliber player. You are expecting somebody that is going to be able to alter the trajectory of your franchise. And when you think about that contemporaneously against the backdrop, especially with the benefit of hindsight, and you look at the top of drafts retroactively, you look at them 5-10 years later. We're 10 years removed. 2014 was Leon Draisaitl's draft. He was picked third overall. In that draft, Aaron Ekblad went first overall. Sam Reinhart, second overall. Leon third. Sam Bennett fourth. Michael Del Cole fifth. Jake Virtanen sixth. Hayden Fleury seventh. Willie Nylander eighth. Nikolai Ehlers ninth. Nick Ritchie 10th. Kevin Fiala 11th. And really quickly, you get an understanding of just how dicey all of this stuff is. And if you were to do a redraft today, if you were to redo the 2014 draft contemporaneously, not contemporaneously, I like using the big words, but every now and then I stumble on my words. If you were to redo that draft today, knowing what you know now 10 years ago, Draisaitl is unequivocally the first overall pick. I think if you were to game out the drafts over the last 10 years, I think there's a strong argument he only goes behind McDavid, Matthews, and McKinnon. You could maybe make an argument for some of the other guys, whether it be Jack Hughes on the younger side because you'd prefer the age. But when you think about it all, Draisaitl has been an unequivocal success at the NHL level. This is clearly somebody who is on that higher plane of existence that you're always hoping for when you pick that highly. So think about it like this. Draisaitl has played more than 20 minutes a game as a forward since he was 23 years old, 2018, 2019. His quality of competition has gotten easier over time, and that's partly because the Oilers have finally figured out enough forward depth that they don't have to ride McDavid and Draisaitl together. They don't have to be a tandem. And, that was a real early on in Draisaitl and McDavid's run together. They were always together, well, whether it was McClellan, whether it was Dave Tippett or Jay Woodcroft. For the most part, it was always McDavid and Draisaitl together at 5-on-5, and then, of course, on the first power play unit. But when you think about it, it makes sense that as we've gone along over the last 2 years, that as the Oilers have been able to round out their roster a little bit better, have more forward depth, that Draisaitl and McDavid can both have quality supporting line mates, that the quality of competition Draisaitl is going to have is going to go down because McDavid is going to get the harder matchups. Teams are going to have to pick their poison, for the lack of a better expression, of do we want our best guys out there against Connor or against Leon? And that's really why you've seen the quality of competition Draisaitl's faced go down over the last few years. He's had easier matchups. Then this past year, for the first time in quite a long time, Leon's most common line mates did not feature Connor McDavid. or Zach Hyman. That was 2 years ago. The last year, Jay Woodcroft, they were his most common line mates. This past season, it wasn't. He had ample time with Warren Fogle, with Evander Kane. Then in the playoffs, you saw he had time with Nugent-Hopkins. He had time with Dylan Holloway. He had time with with more than just McDavid. And of course, it is a real trump card when you're a professional hockey coach to say, "Oh, I need a goal. Let me get 2 of the 8 best players in the world, 2 of the 5 best players in the world on the same line together. We need 1 goal. Let's let Connor, Leon, and Zach Hyman cook." And one thing you can point out, and I think is something that is worth considering, because Chris Knobloch so aggressively deploys his best line with his best defensive pair as much as he possibly can, as opposed to looking for certain matchups, Leon doesn't get the benefit of playing with Evan Bouchard and Matthias Ekholm as much as McDavid does. That means more Darnell Nurse. That means more Cody Ceci. That means Brett Kulak. That means Vincent Desharnais. And it does matter because as much as we think of Draisaitl as this transformational force, this dynamic all-world player, if the defenseman cannot get the puck to him, they can't go on offense. And there is a contingent of people on social media and who write about hockey professionally who have dinged Draisaitl's playoff performance this past year for not being able to drive possession as heavily. And the counterpoint to that is, go look at Nathan McKinnon's numbers away from Cale Makar. Go look at Artemi Panarin's numbers away from Adam Fox. And really quickly, you start to get a better understanding and just how important having quality defensemen who can transition from defense to offense unlock more. That's not a knock to say, hey, Leon should be able to do a little bit more. He should, but you do have to understand that the defensemen and their skill sets, they do matter. So when you play Draisaitl with Nurse and Ceci, neither of whom can recover the puck or move the puck, it's going to be harder. Leon's going to have to play more defense, and he's not great defensively. He's not a particularly explosive skater. He's not particularly physical. Where Draisaitl excels is his playmaking and his positioning. He's able to think the game really quick. You know, I go back to the goal he helped facilitate in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final, that pass to Warren Fogle, the chip pass that got over like 3 people, you know, was very reminiscent of a soccer overhead pass, if you're familiar with that. And that level of thinking, that dynamic playmaking, that type of stuff, it is not something that should dissipate. Even if he gets slower, even if injuries accumulate, he should still be able to think the game at a really high level. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit about the dollars and cents of it all. And then the third segment, we're going to tackle some of the players that Draisaitl is in competition with as far as setting the top. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But now, in the middle of summer, we have fewer games. All we've got, Major League Baseball, the WNBA. We do have the Olympics coming, and football is not that far away. But the sports are not sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. If you were so curious and you wanted to get in on the action, want to go look over Stanley Cup favorites? You get the Oilers 8.5 to 1, the Panthers 9.5 to 1, the Stars 10 to 1, the Devils and Avalanche 11 to 1, the Hurricanes and Rangers 14 to 1, the Leafs 15 to 1, Vegas 17 to 1. A long shot, the Vancouver Canucks 26 to 1 to win the Stanley Cup. So head on over to FanDuel and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we're going to get into the minutia here. So it's important to understand that player evaluation it is ultimately subjective that everybody who watches hockey, whether you're a fan, the general manager of a hockey team, you're looking at different things. And different people who have different backgrounds and different types of training, they think about the game differently than others. So it's important that you understand that just because I feel this way doesn't necessarily mean you need to agree with me, think I'm right, but I do want to lay out how I think about hockey. So, in my opinion, the most important trait a player can have is positioning and IQ. You can call it hockey sense, you can call it instinct, whatever word you want to use to describe it. The most valuable trait, in my estimation, is a player's hockey instincts, the way they feel the game, how they know where they need to be, where they don't need to be, where their opponent is going, and where their opponent's going, how it dictates where they're going to ultimately go. So that's my most important thing in my mind when we're talking about player evaluation. It sets up so many other things because off of that, you can talk about transition, you can talk about playmaking, you can talk about goal scoring, you can talk about defense. All of this stems off of hockey sense. Hockey sense is a catch-all term. It is not very descriptive. So when I think about hockey sense, the best way I can articulate it for you is the player where they need to be when they need to be there? Is Draisaitl getting to the spot in the defensive zone to receive the breakout pass from a defenseman so the Oilers can go from defense to offense? Is he making himself available in the neutral zone to receive the pass at the blue line and skate the puck in and allow the play to flow off of him? In the offensive zone, is he bobbing and weaving, trying to find open space, or is he stationary? Is he parked out in a specific spot? Is he always looking to shoot? Does he have the instinct to pass one extra time to set up a tap in as opposed to taking a lower quality shot, even though he's a high quality player? And in my opinion, what separates the elite players from the good and the average is how easy they make it look. I tell this anecdote a lot, but a few years ago, 2021, 2022, opening night, the Rangers are playing the Dallas Stars. It is early November. It is early October. And my friend who I went to the game with, not a huge hockey fan, a casual, watches, will go to a few games a year, but he turns over to me and goes, I get what you mean about Artemi Panarin. That every time Panarin touches the puck, it's like warm butter. It is a knife through warm butter. It is so effortless. It is so smooth. And then he said jokingly, I get what you mean about Ryan Reeves, because when Ryan Reeves is out there, the small, choppy strides, trying to build up as much speed as possible because he's not that fast. Draisaitl, where he sets himself apart in making the game look easy, is the feel for the puck. It's this pass needs to go exactly here, and it needs to die on this person's tape so that they're going to receive it in a position to make a play. It's one thing to be able to execute the pass, but putting the pass in a position where your teammate can make a play with the puck, it's imperative because I don't want to say it's easy to just move the puck, but moving the puck precisely, and then moving the puck precisely enough that the person receiving the pass can make a play, it's a part of building that link up, that interconnectedness that really sets a player apart. And when a player is so smooth with it, they can put the puck wherever they need. You know, you've heard the expression, put the puck on a string, and that's what separates the great players apart from the good players. And there are plenty of guys in the National who can make, ooh, this play, or ooh, that play. But can you do it almost every night? Can you park yourself at the bottom of the circle on your strong side, receive one-timers, and blast them past the goalie over and over and over again like Draisaitl can? There are not a lot of players in the world who are this good. It is really crazy when you think about it, how good Draisaitl is in his own right. And it is important to understand that the internet is not a real space. And I'm going to elaborate on that. So there have been numerous psychological studies that the people who post on social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you post, only about 5% of people who use these sites, 5 to 10% of the people who use these websites, generate 80% of the posts. The vast majority of people don't post at all. They lurk. They linger on social media. They absorb other people's content. but they don't make content of their own. So the people who are arguing the most, who are the most present, are usually the ones who are the most passionate about something. And being passionate doesn't necessarily mean you're right. And that's an imperative. That's important to understand, because you are always going to have people who argue in bad faith. Well, Draisaitl plays with McDavid. You have to tax him for that. You can't take his numbers at face value because he plays with a great player. Nathan MacKinnon's don't count. Nathan MacKinnon playing with Makar and Rantanen, that counts. Marner playing with Matthews or Tavares or Willie Nylander, that counts. Panarin playing with Adam Fox, that counts. Pasternak playing with McAvoy. Elias Pettersson playing with Quinn Hughes, those don't count. And that's why that type of argument is so frustrating to me, because great players should play with each other. In an ideal world, you'd have 12 Connor McDavids for your forward group, and you'd be the best hockey team in the history of hockey. But there's a salary cap. You can't build a basketball-style super team because the money isn't there. So you have to prioritize certain skill sets. And when we're talking about Draisaitl, the one thing you would like from him is a little more oomph. And I know, again, that's not very descriptive. That's not very articulate. But you just, especially in the playoffs, whether it was the conference final or the Stanley Cup final, you needed him to have a little bit more oomph to his game, a little bit more of a meanness, not a frustration, that's not the right word, an attitude about himself that you're not stopping me. I don't care. I'm better than you. And part of that, like we talked about at the outset, is he was playing with poor defensemen. It took a little while for him to find the right configuration of line mates up front. And it all comes against the backdrop of knowing that he was dealing with an injury. So context does matter, but do understand that some people don't want to be reasoned with. You can only have a conversation with other rational people. Otherwise, it's just two people regurgitating their talking points over and over again, and not an argument. Those are the people who are arguing in bad faith. But unfortunately, that's the vast majority of the internet. You know, I cited that stat and I'll repeat it again. It's about 5% of the people on the internet make about 80 to 90% of the content on the internet. And it's only the most passionate and engaged people who are making that type of content who are that present online. So you got to understand that just because someone's passionate doesn't mean they know what they're talking about, that you should listen to how they argue. You should see how they handle pressure on their talking points. And then you can start to form an opinion about their cohesiveness as an identity, as a prognosticator, if you will. So we're going to take one more quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the money. We're going to talk about some of the players Draisaitl is compared to in this tier, coming up next. Thank you to everybody who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. Thank you for making the show a part of your day. Even in the dead of summer, I'm going to do my best to make this show smart, informative, and something where you are getting something out of listening every single day. Whether it's an idea, whether it's a stat, whether it's a way to think about things, whatever. My goal is to give you a show that's going to make your experience as a hockey fan richer. That's the goal of all the content I do. So when we're talking about Leon and his contemporaries, I'm going to come out and say it. This is not a hot take. McDavid is on his own tier. That is the best player in the world. The next level down, Austin Matthews, Nathan MacKinnon, maybe Sasha Barkov, maybe David Pasternak, maybe Artemi Panarin, Nikita Kucherov, Leon, whoever you want to throw in there, Mitch Marner. There are a lot of really talented players who fall somewhere in that 2 through 8 spot. There are defensemen you could put in there, whether it be Fox or Cale Makar. There were goalies, whether it's Shesterkin or it's UC Saros or Jeremy Swayman, whomsoever. It is important. Like I just talked about, the things I value go into how I feel about these various players and how I rank them. So I'm just going to read the stats. Okay, these are just the stats. These are objective fact. You cannot dispute these. Over the last 5 years, Austin Matthews has 257 goals, 187 assists. Nathan MacKinnon has 180 goals, 317 assists. Mitch Marner has 127 goals, 288 assists. Nikita Kucherov has 132 goals, 279 assists. Artemi Panarin has 149 goals, 312 assists. David Pastrnak has 216 goals, 227 assists. Mikko Rantanen has 182 goals, 226 assists. Leon Draisaitl has 222 goals and 316 assists. Draisaitl's 538 points over the last 5 years are the second most of any player in the entire league. Number one, of course, is Connor McDavid. In that span, Leon Draisaitl has 3 50-goal seasons. That's the second most of any active player, not just in the last 5 years. Of all active players, the only player with more 50-goal seasons than Leon Draisaitl is Alex Ovechkin. There are no other active players with multiple 50-goal seasons. Oh, no, I lied. Excuse me. Austin Matthews and Steven Stamkos have 2 each. Those are the only other players with multiple 50-goal seasons in their respective NHL careers. So we're talking about somebody who scores at a ridiculously high clip, something I didn't mention. Out of all of those players, Draisaitl has the highest shooting percentage of anyone on that list at 19.6%. Think about that. 1 in every 5 scoring shots on goal Leon Draisaitl takes, they go in the net. That is an absurd conversion rate of goals. When you think about it abstractly, 1 in 5. That would be really bad in basketball, if you were a 3-point shooter. But in hockey, to shoot almost 2 times the league average in conversions, to score on twice as many shots as league average is just it's stupid. It is ridiculous. Nobody should be scoring on almost 20% of their shots on goal in the NHL. And then you start talking about the money. The highest paid player in the league right now is Nathan MacKinnon at 12.6 against the cap. David Pastrnak is 11.25. Dougie Hamilton is at $9 million. Seth Jones, Ovechkin are $9.5 million. Kirill Kaprizov is $9 million. Alex Pietrangelo is $8 million. Barkov is $10 million. Zach Werenski, Adam Fox are both 9.5. Timo Meyer's 8.8. Erik Karlsson is 11.5. Really quickly, you get to begin to understand just how lucky the Oilers are that Peter Chiarelli had a momentary stroke of genius. I'm not prepared to say there aren't any other GMs who would have given Draisaitl that contract that Chiarelli did coming off of his entry-level contract. But there are definitely general managers out there who would have played hardball with him. There are definitely general managers out there who would have said, well, can you prove it? We think you're going to be very good, but we would like you to go out there and do it again before we go long. And that conviction, and unfortunately Peter Chiarelli's convictions got him in a lot of trouble, that conviction that Draisaitl was going to be an elite talent, an all-world talent, has saved the Oilers so much money. Because there's an alternate universe where the Oilers go short. They do 2 or 3 years bridge. Coming off of the ELC, he explodes. He has the 50-goal season. He wins the Hart Trophy the year McDavid's injured. And very easily, Draisaitl's making $10 or $11 million, and the Oilers' calculus changes. You think about some of the desperation moves the Oilers have had to make over the last handful of years, whether it's Evander Kane, whether it's Corey Perry. They had to do that because they didn't have enough money. Now imagine they had even less money than that. They weren't able to bring in Zach Hyman, and instead of Jack Campbell, they had to do something else in that. And maybe they're better, but they are not Stuart Skinner level good. And really quickly, you get to a crazy sliding door scenario where if Draisaitl is not this good, and if Draisaitl is this good and the Oilers don't go along with him when they did coming off of his entry-level contract, the one last thought I want to leave you with. Draisaitl is going to reset the market. I would be shocked if Draisaitl's number... I would be shocked if Leon Draisaitl's cap hit does not clear Nathan MacKinnon. Nathan MacKinnon makes 12.6 against the cap. McDavid makes 12.5 against the cap. McDavid, as we all know, has 2 years remaining on his contract. Draisaitl has 1. It is a responsibility as a star player, when you have it, to reset the top of the market. This is why, if you go and look over at the NFL, the latest player at a position to get paid is always the one who sets the record. In football, you saw the quick run. You saw Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen. At wide receiver, you saw Tyreek Hill. you're seeing in real time, watching CD Lamb and AJ Brown deal with those situations. It is Draisaitl's obligation to try and reset the market so that the next star player who comes up, which will be McDavid, can ask for even more money than that. Because as a laborer, you have to have solidarity with your coworkers. You need to be doing whatever you can to raise the wages for everybody. And maybe Draisaitl's different. Maybe he says, I'll take less money so the team can be more competitive. Maybe. You think about what they did with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, where they gave him a really long deal for less AAV. Nugent-Hopkins had to agree to say, I'll leave some money on the table because I want to win. It depends what Leon wants. If he wants to reset the market, I wouldn't be shocked. If he says, I want to take less money so me and Connor can continue to maintain this window, wouldn't shock me. So we'll see. This is the first real test we're going to see, unfortunately, of Stan Bowman's tenure. That's a day long as Oilers general manager. But that will just about do it for today's episode of Locked On Oilers. So if you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please throw the show a 5-star review. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know. Who do you think is better out of Draisaitl and McKinnon and Matthews and Marner and Rantanen and Kucherov and Panarin and Pasternak and all of those players in that tier? Let me know who you think's the best out of that mix. Talk soon. But before we get out of here, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.